Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, there it is. Okay, I'm saying here, sitting here, pressing the button saying, hey, good morning. Oh, okay, that doesn't sound like I'm on. Hey, that also sounds kind of muted. Hey, good morning. Oh, all right. Well, finally, the button has responded. Good morning. How are you? It is Wednesday. A little disoriented off the air yesterday, so it feels like a Monday, but every day feels like a Monday if you get right down to it. And it feels like a Monday because Greg Dworkin is here, but Monday's not the only day he's here. Wednesday is another of the days. That one follows Tuesday. That was the one yesterday when neither of us were here. And it's the big benefit of that is that to me, this week seems like much less stupid than a usual week by this point in the week, but that's only because we just failed to take note of Tuesday, but that's what we're here to do now. It's Wednesday. Probably some elections have happened somewhere. We may have some results, or we may have said, to hell with these things. Let's just wait for the big ones that are yet to come. Plenty of action also this week in the Supreme Court. All eyes are there. Hopefully all noses are not, because it turns out that the president, what's his name? Trump, has decided he says he's going to attend today's session, I guess to glower at the judges so that they give him what he wants on birthright citizenship. That's the case they'll be considering today. Yesterday, they handed down a decision that also was rather worrisome and terrible as well. Although careful legal analysis apparently will remind you that while it has terrible implications and is very poorly decided, it's a weird case procedurally and doesn't necessarily portend the end of days, as many Supreme Court cases that go terribly actually do. But that doesn't mean there's no reason whatsoever to be worried about it. There's plenty of reason to be worried about it, but it's not a final sort of decision where the Supreme Court has said this will now be the rule with respect to what they call conversion therapy. And this it's a Colorado case involving a Colorado ban on such therapies, and in a rather narrow and weird ruling that we'll really have to wait for some more fallout to understand more fully. That didn't, of course, stop any sort of online freakouts about it, and that's okay. If it weren't for online freakouts, what would we have to talk about? But today, birthright citizenship comes up, and it's a direct challenge to birthright citizenship, which means, in other words, a direct challenge to, interestingly enough, the constitutionality of a portion of the Constitution, which, is an awkward sort of thing to have to deal with, but also awkward is having the President of the United States sit there and glower at the judges. It reminds me of the part of Miracle on 34th Street where the political boss shows up and sits in court to make sure that he gets the decision that he thinks the judge needs to render in order to hold on to political power. So if at some point you see after the arguments, the Solicitor General say he's got to go get that football helmet, you'll understand what's going on. And I don't know if at any point Santa Claus either enters the building, if he does do that and doesn't take Trump with him, there's a light bulb on one side that won't light. Take him back to the workshop and see if you can fix the guy. So Trump decided he's going to show up. Harmeet Dillon, by the way, as the Assistant Attorney General, was on social media yesterday insisting that all you ahistorical idiots don't understand this is not something that is unusual or unheard of. She believes, in fact, that there's a special chair like Elijah's cup, which we'll be discussing later on this evening, but not necessarily on the air, is set aside for the president in case he wants to sit in on oral arguments. And most other people who have actually been to the Supreme Court, I mean, she has to have been there at some point, say, yeah, no, not so much. Or I think somebody got points online for saying, is the chair in the room with us right now? It's very weird. I don't know. But they decided that's going to be the case. Is about I would say 80% chance that he blows it off and says, I have to go in the morning. Forget it. I'm not going. And I just wanted to threaten to show up. But if he does show up, there's also online betting markets about whether he falls asleep, whether he smells terrible and no one will sit next to him, whether he farts himself awake again, or generally can't contain himself and shouts out during arguments, and the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not the President of the United States is too disruptive to remain in the courtroom, and what happens if you decide you need to throw him out and he doesn't want to go. So any number of things that could be happening today, and not just the legal stuff. It could be any number of very, very dumb things. So we'll try and make up for our dumb quotient for this week. I gave you a good portion of last year's dumb in case you needed more to hold yourself over. But Greg Dworkin is back. He's collected some of it as well, and will share it with us. That's the president entering the Supreme Court. All right. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm fine. Listen,
Good.
Is that Trump chair an electric chair? I'm just wondering, or is it the manual version?
Right. It's a good question. Fair, I think. It's AI, and it will decide your innocence or guilt. We're going to get rid of the court system. That's the new thing to be marketing. An electric chair that just every citizen has to take a turn in, and AI will decide in consultation with a precog whether or not to zap you.
Right. David is the process person, so I asked them before the show, if Trump loses at the Supreme Court, which he's highly likely to do, the question on the table is going to be, who does he appeal to?
Right. And the answer is...
He doesn't appeal to me, so I don't know, who he's possibly going to appeal to.
There's very few people that he still appeals to. I know you'll have that covered as well. He may think that there is such a thing. I think you had a good suggestion, actually, that he might say, well, that's what the Board of Peace is for. It's a higher court somehow, and it only costs $1 billion to get on, so it's the most high-quality people.
So the title of my pundit roundup today was, When You Only Govern for Your Base, Bad Things Happen. And that particular comment headline came from a little clip that we have. Actually, you know what I should have done? I should have sent it to you so you could play it. So I think I'll do it right now, because I love doing this to David. Like, are you awake? Scramble. Go ahead. Do this. Yeah. It's right at the very, very bottom of the list.
As it will be at this point, yes.
And it's Pete Hegseth speaking.
Oh, boy. That sounds good.
And I think there's some lessons learned here.
Oh, dear. Well, one of them is, prepare before you go
I mean, I get that,
and,
but,
Yeah, right. Oh, that's not I don't know if I can count that as a lesson. That's just sort of like, breathe in, breathe out. Given, but okay. Yeah. All right, Pete Hegseth. Well, we're going to listen to him. Here goes. Look at all the petrochemicals in his hair. This is really something. I don't know how he's getting a hold of all this, with the Strait of Hormuz being the way it is. But
yeah, because, did you know 90% of the Brill cream comes through the Strait of Hormuz?
And ends up here.
Ends up in his hair.
Yeah, man. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, Pete Hegseth, looking serious.
President Trump and boots on the ground.
I think I'll have to crank this up. There's not enough volume.
Well,
he
is a crank.
Okay. Do I have a controller that I can do that won't completely? I probably don't. Let's try to remember where I was, boost the sound, and then see what happens. All right, back to the beginning with Pete Hegseth.
As far as President Trump and boots on the ground.
That's good.
I don't understand why the base, which they have already, they understand, wouldn't have faith in his ability to execute on this. Look at his track record of pursuing peace through strength, America first outcomes. What he's simply saying, and it's exactly true, and I've said from this podium too.
So that's it.
Okay, that's enough nonsense from the. So,
but now the context is missing from this. But
I'm lost.
He was asked by a very friendly reporter.
That's the only one's allowed.
Do you think the base would go along with this? And that's left out of the clip.
Now.
So when you look at the clip, you look at that and think, look, I know the guy only governs for his base, but are you out there saying that so everybody can hear and understand? That's the quiet part. Why are you saying out loud? And the answer is because he has restricted, although the courts say he can't do this anymore, his press conferences to friendly people. So now unfriendly people, which is to say neutral people, can be there to ask questions. But this was a friendly, and the friendly wanted to know, as far as this base goes, what do you think? And so that was Hex's answer.
It's an interesting question.
And it was an interesting question, and that's why the question was a lot more interesting than his answer. Although his answer was like bizarre, but in context you understand why he's saying what he's saying. But I think what the world hears is, look, we know the guy only governs for his base. Let's just say it out loud and talk about it as if that's a serious issue.
Yeah. Well, the base is, by the way, Prince Sultan Air Base in, where's that one? Qatar? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
but the one that keeps getting hit. That's the base we're governing for.
Mr. Bonesaws used to be his base. But, he said, you know what? I think I'll make a deal with Ukraine. I'm not even going to tell you.
Yeah.
And Trump was very upset about that and basically sent Rubio over there
Saudi
to say,
Arabia.
what's going on? And MBS was very polite and didn't say, as Trump said to him, he can kiss my ass. He just said, we have to do things that are in our best interest.
What?
Which is, I think, the entire world is going to do that. So, Trump, in his infinite wisdom, because the only place it was base, is alienating everybody else. And we know that from polling. Today's poll, because there's always a bad poll for Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Today's poll is CNN, March 26th or 30th, opinion of Trump's handling of the economy. In April of 25, it was 39% approve. July 25, 40% approved. January 39% approved. Very steady. Now it's 31.
Well,
so there's a number of interesting things happening here.
Yeah.
G. Elliott Morris is tracking the difference between this week's slew of polling, showing Trump's job approval rating in his aggregate hitting all-time lows, minus 21 on average, across a lot of polling firms this week. Democrats, meanwhile, in his average, are, quote, only, unquote, +6 on the House generic ballot. That's enough to win the House.
Yes.
But
we hope so.
Obviously not as large as the Trump disapproval.
Right.
So G. Elliott Morris tries to address the question, well, how come there's a lag between what the generic ballot says and people disliking Trump?
Okay.
Why aren't they better
I feel
correlated?
Like there's not, but all right.
And although they go together, they move up and down together. Basically,
Why
if
the gap?
You're a Democrat, you hate Trump, and if you're a Republican, you support him, if you're still a Republican.
Yeah.
But a lot of somewhat disapprove of Trump people still are nonetheless Republicans.
Yes.
And those still nonetheless Republicans are not going to vote for a Democrat.
Yes, also.
They may stay home.
Right.
But they're not going to vote for a Democrat. So those people are ungettable. There are somewhat disapprove of Trump voters who are Democrats. You'll get those even if they haven't come around yet. And there are somewhat disapprove independents. And they are the I really don't know what I'm going to do people. And that I'm not sure what I'm going to do group of people are the ones that Democrats have to aim at. Those are younger voters. Those are maybe non-white voters. The white non-college voter tends to be a Republican who somewhat disapproves of Trump, and it's not at all clear you can get them. You can get them to stay home, but it's not clear you can get them to vote for you. So the Democrats have to go out and try to get the I don't belong to either party, I'm young and I hate politics group of people who somewhat disapprove of Trump, and they don't know what they're going to do. And that's why you get that gap. And it's just an interesting thing because we talked about on Monday that G. Elliott Morris had shown with his data from his Verisite polling that 3/4, roughly, a little bit less, of the Democratic upper performance is due to persuasion, and 1/4, maybe a little bit more, is due to turnout. So you do have to persuade people. You can persuade people, and that's why the Democrats are overperforming in these special elections. And yes, there were a couple on yesterday, that we'll briefly talk about. There were ones in Massachusetts that were for, state house stuff, and they basically came up as you'd expect. Democrats won. That's what happens in Massachusetts.
Well, that's good.
There was an interesting one in Arkansas.
And
this was for the Secretary of State. And it was only interesting because there were two GOP candidates running for Secretary of State. Whoever wins the primary is going to win the general election.
This is a primary, though. Yeah, okay.
So Kim Hammer, state senator, who had sponsored several restrictions on Arkansas's elections and initiative process, won a Republican nomination by less than 1,000 votes. This is from the Arkansas Advocate. Okay. Right? He was supported by Sarah Huckabee Sanders. He was supported by Tom Cotton. He had the establishment support and barely won, 50.6% of the vote.
What do we know? Was the other person super crazy?
The other person was super crazy. His name is Army veteran Brian Norris.
What a name.
He was supported by Mike Lindell and a couple of other nutcases. Secretary of State Cole Jester had also endorsed Hammer, the establishment guy's bid, and condemned Norris over offensive social media messages, including one where he called cotton a vulgar term, but the newspaper refused to say what that vulgar term was.
Oh, man, it could be anything. Well,
I know. It was so interesting. I have to go look that up. You have any guesses?
I mean,
well, it was Tom Cotton, so there's like a wide variety of things.
All right. Well, tomorrow's show can be about everybody guessing.
I think maybe javelina.
Yeah. What? How did that even get?
It's a pig-like animal that runs around Arizona that I was just reading about right before I got on the show.
30 to 50.
Because, news is stuff that happens to your editor on the way to work.
Yeah, I guess so. My goodness. So what? All right. Are they trending somehow?
Javelinas smell really bad.
I see. There's one in the Supreme Court today. I think. I don't know what else could be explaining this. All right. Well, that's pretty
I don't know what their sleeping pattern is.
Oh. Yeah, could be any time. All right.
They're not like the feral hogs where bullets bounce off.
Yeah, right. 30 to 50 of them anyway.
But, they do go in
packs and
groups, packs. What do they call them?
What do you call a group of javelinas?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a fun name for it or no? Is it just
something
birds?
Like that?
All right. We'll see if we can't make one up by the end of this show. All right. Well, that's pretty weird. And, well, I guess, I don't know. Nothing to keep an eye on in Arkansas. I guess come November, it will be, what? Hammer?
Yeah.
Is the name
Kim
of this?
Hammer.
Kim Hammer. Okay.
So he'll win.
Arm and
that'll
Hammer.
be the end of that. Arm and Hammer.
Yeah.
Right. 50.58 to 49.42. So the nutcase almost won, but didn't. That's really the story there.
But no real functional difference between the two. Just one's a nutcase with Mike Lindell's support, and one is the nutcase with Tom Cotton's support.
Right.
All right.
So anyway, I thought I would mention that.
Sure.
And
I asked.
Yeah.
It's my fault. I shouldn't have said anything.
But that's okay. It's an interesting term, and you really need to know.
Okay.
So, are we going to war with Iran? Well, we have already won that war 17 times, so I'm not sure what Trump is going to announce tonight. He could announce that he's tacoing. He could announce that all those troops that moved there, the 82nd Airborne and the Marine Expeditionary Force, were not there for show. He's going to do something and make noise for about 2 weeks to satisfy everybody and, redeem his honor.
There's just
and
been
then
so
leave.
many things, he said.
We don't know. What we do know is that the terms for why we went to war are shifting to the point where it was originally to get rid of the nuclear material and regime change. It's now, we have to be there to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, was open before we went to war.
Yes.
And now gas is $4 a gallon, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it might also be open, but just not
and
to
even
us.
More importantly, diesel is $5 a gallon, and diesel is what trucks use, and that's what moves goods across the U.S., and so your prices are going up, and you haven't even begun to feel it yet. And while we're at it, why don't we just wreck the world order? I'll pull out of NATO and destroy everything. And who the hell cares? I'm going to the Supreme Court, and I'm going to make faces at him and see what happens.
Yes.
And this is what happens when you have a toddler who's
he doesn't even know he's making
place.
faces. He just is. Yeah, he's getting facial tics and droops and things now anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I am informed reliably enough that Scott sends me this thing that says a group of javelinas is called a squadron.
A squadron, that's the name I couldn't think
Weird.
of. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's also another name for javelinas.
And it wasn't a pack. It wasn't a murder of crows.
Right.
Right? It wasn't a school of fish.
Right.
It was a squadron of javelinas. And, the commanding officer is like bad news because they have really sharp teeth.
Okay.
But the point is they smell
yes.
really bad. They have a scent gland that they set off to mark their territory. They can't see very well, but you can smell them.
I don't know if this is my territory or not, but okay. Well,
thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Yes, it keeps us up to date.
That's the word I couldn't remember.
That's wild.
Because I had a senior moment and I couldn't remember squadron.
All right. Well, the problem with that moment was now I forget what we were talking about before. I meant to just say that as an aside.
Oh, that was the bad thing that Tom Cotton was called that nobody really knows. And I figured he called them a smelly javelina.
Could be. They have another name as well. Collared peccaries, I guess.
Oh, they're peccaries. They're not pigs. They look
know.
like pigs, but they're not pigs.
Yeah. Like Tom Cotton.
Yeah, they're not feral hogs.
Right. So, okay. Well, now at least we learned that much. The squadron. All right. So it's like that's not the squad. It's a squadron.
Right.
But, okay. Got it. What else were we, I don't remember.
Well, so there's a writer, Jonathan Tuval. I don't know if I mentioned him on the show on Monday. Wrote an essay for the New York Times. Is it 1914 in America? And talked about the fact that the war going badly and not being able to predict what Iran was going to do and how they react.
Yeah.
Maybe that was just bad luck or a failure of intelligence, but it's not. He says the Israeli intelligence was so good they were penetrating Tehran's traffic cameras. That's how they knew where all the leaders were.
That you mentioned, yes, right, okay.
Right.
But is it 1914? Are we talking about like
World War I?
Guns of
So
August?
yet neither has so much been seen so precisely by so many people who understand so little of what they're seeing. The system can tell you where a man is or where he's going. It can't tell you what his death will mean for a nation. So such systems are trained on behavior, not on meaning. And this is the reason, to make a long story short, you can't rely on stuff like AI.
Yeah.
So familiar errors appear. The war planners imagine a regime can be decapitated, but external attack often does the opposite. It binds a battered state more tightly to a society newly united by injury, humiliation, and rage. Think about that girls' school that was targeted, for example.
Which one? We're on 3 now.
And then he says, when war exposes a failure not only of strategy, but of literacy.
Oh?
Literature and history, at the most serious, train precisely the faculties those leaders lack, a capacity to grant the other minds what they're thinking and how they might react. A mind tutored by history and literature knows that actors in the grip of a sacred cause tend to mean what they say, and bombing a myth is more likely to consecrate it than dissolve it. And he talks about, motivations and how technical superiority doesn't necessarily mean you win. This is the old tactics are one thing. The U.S. is very good at bombing things and destroying them, so is Israel.
Oh, yeah, we're pretty good.
But strategy is something else altogether.
Yeah.
And then, brings in Shakespeare.
Okay. I could believe it. It makes
Macbeth,
sense.
A man who catches sight of a possible future and mistakes that glimpse for a license to force events. That's not how it works. Right. So, Brian Beutler takes that and riffs on it and says, look, there's an empathy gap, and that has swallowed America. Okay? Trump is a predatory person. His antipathy makes him a bad fighter. If you can't contemplate humans as complex creatures with interior lives and passions and their own motivations, and all you think of them are binary instruments and pawns, you're never going to get it right. And he says that's not just the way Trump wages war, it's how he does politics, because it also helps explain multiple dynamics unfolding between the U.S. and other countries, within the U.S. under Trump, how Trump only governs basically for his base. And among Democrats, some of whom make a similar mistake in failing to think of constituents as humans rather than collections of ones and zeros, the focus group approach to governance as opposed to, just doing the right thing. So this empathy deficit, whether because like in Trump's case, it's contempt, or in Democrats' case for the desire to reduce politics to clipboards and spreadsheets, you miss the human part of it. And
although the clipboards are an attempt to find it, just doesn't work.
But don't just go by them. The central insight in Tuval's essay is that might is no substitute for contingency planning, which in turn requires an understanding of human instinct. And you don't just plan what you're going to do, you have to think about what they're going to do. And that was completely lacking in the run-up to this war, even more so than in Iraq 2.0, which we knew didn't happen because they couldn't tell the difference between a Sunni and a Shia, and they didn't think it mattered, and they didn't care. Here, it's even worse. They don't know anything about anything, and they went in anyway.
Yeah.
We didn't think that the Strait of Hormuz would close. We didn't know the Iranians would shoot back. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I guess it's just, like I said, binary. They're either alive or they're dead, and that's the only thing that matters to a war
And so
fighter.
Trump is going to address the nation, and how is he going to undo what's been done? You can't. So
Hello,
that's
nation.
where we stand, and we'll talk about it more after the break.
I guess so, yeah. The plans get worse and worse, and the longer he goes on planning these crazy things with this, I guess, empathy gap, we'll just adopt that, the worse it gets.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's much more to discuss. I forgot, there's this whole war thing happening, right? But I'm glad you brought us back to the subject, and interesting analysis. You wouldn't think, I guess, necessarily off the top of your head, I guess maybe Pete Hegseth is sort of in this mindset, right? What place does empathy have in war anyway? It's war, rawr, very, manly and destructive. But of course, so they'll deny that it has any sort of role in there. But that's sort of the part where we say things like, well, what happens if they capture one of us? Like if we capture them and we tear them apart because we're so manly and tough, well, aren't they going to do the same thing to our guys? And will that make us feel bad? And the people without empathy say, they're soldiers. They knew what they're signing up for. And, moms and dads say, no, I think we wish that they had been returned to us after the war. That would have been better. And that's where empathy has a role even in warfare. But that's just a matter of, do I understand that there are other people out there and that they're going to act based on their motivations? And it's easy to figure out what their motivations are. They're probably almost just like yours, but they're just trying to hold on to a different set of stuff than you are, but for the same reason you are.
Right.
And they just can't figure it out.
Well,
Everyone had to know about the
also a
Stranger
relevant
Things.
video. This is from Dr. Strangelove.
Oh.
I just sent you. This is Peter Sellers, telling George C. Scott, gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Right. Everyone's favorite.
Everybody's favorite. So, yeah,
So, like-
empathy is a huge part of it. Before I forget, I have to mention it's a go for Artemis. And so the U.S. will be launching a rocket in the general vicinity of the moon. And with luck, it'll come back.
Oh, yeah, right. I think that's supposed to be the plan. Oops, I got to hold the war room thing here. But do we need to remind everybody?
No, I
we
just
all know
thought
the
you should
famous
have it.
line. All right, well, I'll send it along to Scott. He can include it and work it into the narrative for today.
Right. More polling, Navigator survey. 1 year after Liberation Day, a majority of Americans oppose Trump's tariff. 7% of Democrats and 17% of independents report favorable views. 55% of Republicans. That's a terrible number for Trump. For only half of Republicans think the tariffs were a good idea. And that's why CNN's, polling about Trump's favorability on the economy being so low, it matters.
Are we 1 year? It was Liberation Day. Was that last year, April 1st or something? Okay.
Yeah, something
Oh my
like that.
God.
I don't know if it was April 1st, but
That would be appropriate.
yeah, it would be. Well, the whole
No
thing
one
has
can
been
tell.
an April Fool's joke.
Well, right. It's the worst April Fool's Day in history. There's no way of knowing whether somebody's making it up or not. Anything could be happening with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, as I'm watching, and it didn't happen on April 1st, but just sort of, I saw it a couple of days ago, but I can't believe it's not an April Fool's joke that they show this, and we'll never find out how it happened either because the investigation into it has been suspended. But the helicopters that show up at Kid Rock's house, I think I made mention of it on Monday, but and now I've seen the video of him like standing out by the pool in his shorts, like, if you're getting a flyby from the armed forces, put on some trousers, sir. Anyway, out by the pool.
Well, he was standing next to the Statue of Liberty.
Yes, right. He's a
worth
mini
anything.
little Statue of Liberty that he stole from a Red Robin hamburger joint, I think. And by the way, he has a sign underneath, and I guess he's got a I don't know, a sunroom portico. God only knows what the hell you call those things. Maybe a lanai room. Maybe that's possible.
Right.
But anyway, a sign up there that declares his house in Nashville area, I think, to be the Southern White House. Not even Pervalago is the Southern White House.
So I looked up because I was curious since you brought it up. Liberation Day tariffs was Wednesday, April 2nd.
All right.
So this is Wednesday, April 1st.
Right.
So but of course, Google being what it is, also asks other questions which seem to be relevant that you might be interested in. Thank you, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we'll see.
For example, what did Trump do on Liberation Day is the first question. People also ask, they categorize it.
He landed on
People
Omaha
also
Beach.
ask, what island is inhabited only by penguins? This is just right here on my screen, and I'm thinking, that's a lot more interesting than Liberation Day. So
that's because they got a tariff. As I
yeah,
understand. That's why. All right.
Yeah, but you know what? That's that's like looking at feral hogs and other animals that.
There's a theme.
So Heard Island, McDonald Island, located near Antarctica, a remote volcanic Australian territory, is primarily inhabited by penguins and seals. Just because people turn into this show to learn policy, procedure, and random facts that have nothing to do with anything.
That's what you're getting.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd give you some.
Interesting. All right. Wow.
But so what happened is that apparently there was a helicopter drive-by with Kid Rock, and people complained about it, and the Army said, we'll look into this, and these people are suspended till we complete our investigation. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, said, no.
Yeah,
they're exonerated. There will be no investigation.
That I believe. But, I do think we should have an answer. I'm just kind of curious, like, at what level? Well, I would like to know what happens when Army helicopter pilots say, let's not go train where we were scheduled to go train. I have another idea. And I Googled, where is Kid Rock's house? And let's fly there. Like, and then like, oh, what about maybe because we blew up the Iranians blew up all of our AWACS and we didn't know where they flew to. That could be it, right? We lost track of them. They're gone from radar, sir. We don't know where they are. But like, essentially, what has to have happened here is the Army. I guess it was their helicopters, right? I thought it was like Apache or Black Hawk helicopter. I don't know which one. I can't tell you from the video. I don't think I know the profiles. But anyway, someone's job, I guess, was to track them on radar. Are they going where they're supposed to be going? Well, and it alarms no one. Heavily armed attack helicopters are flying over Nashville. The first, I think, reaction from people in the area was, are they here to bother us because we're at a protest? I think it was that Saturday. But, and you know, they're trying to wave it off as well. It's not a big deal. They had to get flying hours for their training anyway. What's the difference where they fly? And the answer is, it does make a difference when the Army just randomly flies attack helicopters over populated areas. Yes, what if it goes wrong and something falls out of the sky? Or you're where you shouldn't be, and let's say that's on the approach to National Airport in Washington, D.C., and you smash into a plane on its final approach. Or anything. Why are you where you're not supposed to be? Why is it that the Army keeps saying, to hell with it, we'll fly wherever we feel like it? I'm sure they thought maybe they were carrying no weapons and they figured what could go wrong. But you know, I don't know. But now there won't even be an inquiry as to who said you could or should just fly to Kid Rock's house. Like, honestly, I forget it. I don't care whether it's Kid Rock or anything. But I mean, we have Army pilots saying, I'd like to see some place that I'm interested in. I'll just take a helicopter and go there. We don't want to know about that. But Pete Hegseth says no, because the place they went was Kid Rock's house, so it's okay. Yep. I don't know, man.
Very odd. Hey, speaking of protests, there was an interesting piece here from Will Bunch in the Philadelphia Inquirer.
All right.
Which is a very nice newspaper these days. What naysayers don't get about No Kings, the biggest protest in U.S. history. The No Kings movement brushed off its doubters with a record turnout that gave protesters hope in an age of insanity. And again, part of the context, part of the background here is you have a bunch of the sit in the studio and don't do anything analysts saying, well, yes, okay, so a whole lot of people came out, but can they convince people to unite around specific policy that'll enable Democrats to do X, Y, or Z? And Will Bunch's column is, what are you talking about?
That is like a good question.
Stupidest question you ever heard.
I mean, the question of what are you talking about is a good question.
What are you talking about?
But
here's what we're talking about, said Harry Anton.
I mean, can real politicians unite people around policy? No. So why are you asking your neighbors?
Yeah, what's this got to do with policy?
Yeah.
So he starts out with a movie reference, Marlon Brando and The Wild One. A dancing girl asked his 1950s bongo-pounding biker gang character, what are you rebelling against? And he says, what do you got?
Yeah. Right.
You name it. So they would have felt right at home. Look, they're rebelling and they're protesting. This isn't a policy gathering. People are not, turning out in small towns, big and small, rural, red, blue, to discuss policy. They're protesting the president. Why are you asking about policy? It's a separate question. It's an interesting question, but it's a completely separate question. And as you and I have spoken about on the show for like a decade, you got to win at the politics before you can even get to the policy. First, get elected.
But right, one of the
you
things
don't have the votes, you can't get anything done. That's what we talk about all the time in the House.
People won't run for office under certain circumstances, but might change their mind and do so if they look out the window and say, a lot of people are upset about this, just like me, and I'm not for the policy that they hate. So, well, what are you going to be for? I don't know. I'll tell you when I campaign. But now I've decided to campaign thanks to what I saw out the window today. That's one of the great effects. I was also moved by the fact that, by the way, no one ever asked this. Why are all the protests that we're hoping to encourage in Iran, which were then brutally suppressed? But that was apparently part of the motivation or something a talking point that they threw out in the run up to and initial execution of the war. But that was just generally accepted as a good thing. But no one knows what policies the people on the street in Iran were supporting. And no one asked because he didn't have to know. It was sending a signal to the rest of the world. And there's probably no more important time right now. Like when we see thousands of people, maybe millions out on the street in Iran, even though they were later suppressed, we get the idea here in the United States. Those of us who haven't been eaten by the empathy gap say, these are the people who are going to be the victims of any of our war on Iran, and they're clearly in opposition to their government. We need to look out for this and consider what we're doing and conduct the war in such a way that it targets the right people. Now, again, the people without empathy won't understand, but the truth is that the Iranians, in responding to our attacks, it would be better for us, I think, if they also saw, hey, millions of Americans aren't solidly behind this war, cheering for our deaths and cheering for bombing our children's schools. They're, in fact, opposed to almost everything this government does, and we ought to take that into account if we are to retaliate. I mean, we need to signal to them. This is the only way we can let each other know we don't believe in the annihilation of the entirety of the other side's population, and for good reason. If for no other reason, forget the Trump protest part of it. Show the world that they're right in understanding this war to be insane and poorly conducted. I mean, if for no other reason than that, that's a good reason to get out.
Right, but of course, No Kings isn't just about the war.
It never was.
Pick your issue. It doesn't really matter. The point is, you're not happy with the way Trump is reacting to any of these. You're not happy with Pete Hegseth basically asking and answering a question from his base about the base, which only involves the base, and that's what the whole protest is about.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not totally unrelated. I mean, why no kings? Well, one of the things that we really hate about kings in general is that they can do things like this. Well, I'm just going to direct us to engage in a war. You'll all pay for it, and all of your sons and daughters will be killed in it, but it's for the greater glory of the king, and he won't be in it.
No kings and no duke. Okay, I got that out of my system. Let's move on.
All right. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's no Prince left either. He would have been all right.
Yeah, he'd been great.
Good to hear.
So, it's a good column by Will Bunch and talks about the diversity of people and how it's not really a real politic protest. It's a psychological protest so that people understand they're not alone and they feel better about themselves and what's going on.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a general strike planned for May 1st.
Oh.
You want something practical, keep an eye on that.
Okay. We'll see. I mean, people have been calling for that for a long, long time, but I suppose, well, you got a month.
Right.
Get your organization together.
So Trump announced he has an executive order that the federal government is now going to do mail-in voting regulation.
Right.
He wants every state to mail him everybody who is registered, and they'll do a checklist and tell you who's allowed to vote and who isn't. And the suits have already started. Lawsuits, that is to say, not suits and skirts.
Okay. Yeah, that one was a little crazy, but they all are. And a similar thread that runs through all of them.
He's nuts, and he's falling apart because he knows he's losing. So that's why all this bizarre stuff.
Right. It's an interesting thought, though. Yeah, I'll decide who's allowed to vote. I mean, sure.
Do you have
that would
property?
Be a great way of doing it.
Are you a Republican?
Did you vote for me? Let me see your ballot. You're a yes, you're a no. Everybody now, and he also, by the way, I think he also insists that any mail-in ballots that are allowed under his system of exceptions, which, as you know, is you're allowed to vote by mail if you're on vacation for 3 weeks in the Riviera, like for instance, or in the military, whichever it is. I love his list of exceptions. It's the ones we have now, but
right.
Yeah, he wants to have some sort of a barcode so that each ballot will be individually identifiable, which is kind of anathema to our system of balloting. But I know we do that for verification purposes on mail-in ballots, but I guess now, I don't know. He wants a list of everybody who's allowed, those states think is allowed to vote. He wants to review them and tell the states which ones really aren't allowed.
It's not happening.
No.
I mean, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, said he can, sign whatever damn thing he wants. He's not controlling voting in my state. Thank you.
Yes. Well,
and other governors are saying the same thing. Lawyers are saying the same. It's just not going anywhere. It's just one of those. Trump is going to do a big, bold move that goes nowhere, and he loses.
I guess so. It's his habit lately. Although, and I guess maybe he thought he could get away with it because a couple days ago, it's only been a few days since he said, "I'm going to do an executive order that says you got to pay all the TSA agents."
Well, now he's going to do an executive order that says that the Republicans won.
Sure. Why not? In 2020?
Go ahead, why not?
That one?
I mean, nobody's stopping you, but it doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't take effect.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
ahead,
I think the weird one that happened in
you
between.
go and play with your crayons in the corner and just don't bother the grown-ups when they're talking at the table, okay?
I guess that's part of the reason why you don't
in that
ignore
context,
the TSA
let me give you
one.
some North Carolina polling.
All right. Ew, Duke is there. We don't want that poll. Forget it. Who cares?
No, there's no point in polling that because everybody hates Duke. But North Carolina poll, Roy Cooper, the Democrat.
Yes.
Running for Senate, 50%. Michael Whatley, the Republican, 32%.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's from a shop called Nexus, one of North Carolina's premier political consulting shops. And the commenter says, "Good gravy. This is terrible, but even as an outlier, it skews in a clear direction. It's terrible for Whatley." And then right after that poll comes out, Catawba College, that's where Bowtie Politics lives, one of our favorite political analysts.
Okay.
North Carolina U.S. Senate, Roy Cooper, 47, Whatley, 31. Other, don't know, 22. Democratic Congressional generic ballot, 43, Republican, 38, other or don't know, 16.
Okay.
Josh Stein, the current governor, net approval plus 22, Trump approval minus 13. These are just, by the way, support for U.S. military invention in Iran minus 10. These are terrible numbers for Republicans. North Carolina is a 5-point or less state normally.
Yes.
Somewhat leaning Republican, inelastic state. It's one of those things where if you have a 3-point lead, you're going to keep that 3-point lead. It's really hard to catch. 47-31?
Yeah, that's unusual.
50-32? I mean, this is unbelievable. These are bad numbers for Republicans and goes along with everything else. And that's the context in which Trump is saying, okay, since we can't win, we have to cheat. I know I accuse Democrats of cheating all the time, but every accusation is a confession. And let me show you how I cheat. I'm going to cheat with redistricting. Oh, that's not going to work. Well, I'm going to cheat with controlling mail-in vote. Well, that's not going to work. I'm going to cheat with the Save America Act. Well, that's not going to work. I'll come up with something else, but I have to cheat. Otherwise, we're losing.
I guess it must be what's motivating the extremist podcaster typeset. Is CPAC still going on, or did they wrap that up? But in the
the 14 people who were there left.
Yeah, right. Well, each of them gets one word, and then put the policy together. They've been saying, what he really needs to do is, as long as he's doing executive orders, I think they're making their predictions. Next will be an executive order declaring the Democratic Party outlawed, and so therefore we can finally start rounding up the libs and putting them in the warehouses that we haven't been able to buy yet because the individual jurisdictions are getting in the way of all of our purchases. And now apparently they're temporarily at least suspending their program of purchasing all these things. I'm sure it'll come back later, but yeah, that's what the CPAC cheerleaders are talking about next. That's where they want it to go because America, they've done all their homework.
Right. Well, speaking of doing my homework, that's it for me.
Oh, okay. You're going to go home and do some work?
I'm going to go home.
All right. Well, thank you for coming by and updating us on all this. We have to catch up on some of the latest war plans. I guess one of the things to discuss before tonight's address, and you're right, it will probably largely be off of the teleprompter, but that doesn't mean it's going to be well delivered or make any sense. And he may misread things and then just stick with that interpretation, and suddenly, nope, it's a war in Iraq. After all, he changed it, and he won't admit that he just said the wrong country. But the reason part of the reason why his delivery from those teleprompters just seems so unnatural. Is I do think he will not put on glasses to read the thing, so they have to blow up the font so you cannot fit the whole sentence on the screen at once, and he doesn't know where the text is going. So it should be something of a, disheartening experience. This is a guy he's supposed to know this subject inside and out, but he'll be reading it for the first time tonight. So he doesn't know. We don't know what we're going to get from him. He doesn't know what he's going to give to us, and we don't know whether it'll stay on topic or not. But apparently out there on the table the last couple of days, the discussion he keeps hinting he might really be considering is, since he may go back to the original subject of the war, the enriched uranium and the Iranian nuclear program, whether weaponization of nuclear materials or development of peaceful electric generation capabilities. We don't know, but he'll say it's one or the other, but that he wants to simply remove the problem. If he can't bomb it, he wants to put boots on the ground. This is the troop buildup there, and to go and seize it, like physically take possession of it and remove it from the country, which, is a great cartoon, but not so much a great war plan. For one thing, uranium is very heavy. There's a lot of it. And also, it'll kill you if you just pick it up and carry it in your pockets. But, I don't know what the plan is here, but you're talking about going into underground bunkers in the heart of heavily guarded Iran. And I guess, action movie style, shooting everybody and hitting them all and taking them out with one shot and then running in there. And then what? I don't know. A couple of U-Hauls. Do we drive them in from Iraq? Do we drop them out of the air? I don't know. And then fill up a truck with uranium and get on the uranium highway and drive someplace. And I don't know whether that's what's supposed to be under discussion, or is it just another one of those? Does it go the other direction? The other thing he's floating just as frequently as invading Iran and grabbing their materials and running out the door with them is, maybe the war's over. We're just going to stop. Maybe in 2 weeks we'll be done. We don't even care about the Strait of Hormuz. And if anybody else wants oil, let them go get it. And we hate NATO. And there's what a variety of options he has for tonight. And the only way to know for sure what's really going to happen is, I wish I were getting a sponsorship of this, betting on Kalshi and Polymarket. Why, you can predict the future accurately if you just pick up and send all of your money to, I guess, the CEO of Kalshi, and then everyone will think you're smart, and I don't know what prize you win, but anyway, I guess money, if you're right. But I don't know how they'll predict this, and all of the charts will be dumb looking. The new pastime, I think everybody is sending out afterwards when a market closes on one of the prediction markets. Everybody in the world predicting result A, and then, you were wrong, result B happens, and then whoosh, the chart flips to the 100% probability of the thing you said, where there was nothing more than a 20% probability of 5 minutes before. I don't know if you've studied or any of these charts. You've seen these things in circulation? I don't know. But if not, that'll tell you a little something about the utility of prediction markets. I don't know why these guys think they're such geniuses, documenting the fact that nobody knows anything until it happens. But now it's nobody knows anything until it happens plus money. So I guess we're supposed to pay attention. Very bizarre. So, all right, if you have any predictions in the last minute or perhaps later on in the show, Greg, and you have any guesses as to what you think Trump is going to announce, let us know. The rest of the audience, same thing. Use your social media abilities and email abilities and outreach and give us your predictions. And we'll come back on tomorrow's show and we'll have nothing prepared in terms of a prize for you, but we will call out your name if you get it right, I guess. How about that? Oh, we should borrow a babka from David Neer. Maybe that's the way we could do it. All right. So I will carry on here for the rest of the minute or two before we run out for our break. I did mention at some point earlier, and I'm quite serious about it. I wasn't kidding. I think we've hit our third school in Iran somehow. I believe over the last couple of days, we recently hit like a sports arena, an indoor sports facility where the kids were playing volleyball, and hit that apparently with a brand new, I don't know whether it's really, that much newsworthy, that we hit them with a brand new, so far untested in combat type of missile. But I don't think they care what kind of missile we were hitting them with. The fact is we hit them with one anyway. But I guess the idea of it being untested in combat is, the problem with it is, it may have hit, once again, the wrong target. It did hit the wrong target, but it may have been looking for something completely different that was next door. And I guess we haven't got these things precision targeted enough that, that we can actually differentiate between a volleyball game and a Revolutionary Guard headquarters. I guess they all look the same under a roof, but if we're going to have precision weapons and pretend we're playing with precision weaponry, we're going to have to demonstrate a lot more precision. So I guess probably share prices for whoever made this new kind of missile drop, but it's all about market rigging anyway, and it's your turn in the barrel, I suppose, if you own shares in the company that made this beauty, which apparently detonates at altitude and is packed with tungsten pellets. So it's like a giant shotgun that goes off over the target and just riddles it full of holes like Swiss cheese. And that includes the building and everyone in it. So we're really doing great. And there was a morning report today that yet another school elsewhere has apparently been hit. And I'll see if I can gather up information on that one during the break, just to keep tabs. I mean, someone has to, I suppose. And as unpleasant as the job is, if we're going to be tracking there's no way we can track it accurately, but if we're going to track it responsibly, at a minimum, we have to keep track of all of the things that appear to go wrong. And tonight we'll possibly hear plans about what will go wrong next. All right, so we'll be back in a minute. We'll wrap up the war talk, see if I can't find out some more information on the latest, and move on perhaps to the court talk and other procedural issues of importance after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I haven't gotten a chance yet to find my way through the news reports about the latest attack that may have targeted an Iranian school. Let me see if I can't find that. I'm being distracted by another raft of stories that is distracting me here. But, okay, this is the one about the precision, not so precise missile from the other day. Although I'm pretty sure I had seen something else happen today. By the way, I guess I should also make mention of the fact that somewhere along the line in the last couple of days, and it's gone, I think, unmentioned on the show, Trump's favorite pastime with respect to I guess what you would have to call planning the war. It's not really what he's doing, but or at least executing or threatening to execute the war according to a plan, or several plans that change every 5 minutes. When he's using Truth Social to discuss it, has recently taken to just openly threatening war crimes, as Hegseth has done already, right? And telling people there will be no quarter given and the like, which is itself a war crime. But Trump has said we'll continue to target and hit civilian infrastructure, and I think he made specific mention of, maybe we'll also hit the desalination plants, which, again, war crime, but it's frightening and scary, and so he thinks that passes for tough, and, I guess he thinks that the Iranians will think, oh, he may actually do that, and they may, and he may think he'll get away with it, and he may think that. I don't know whether he actually will get away with it or not, but that's his idea of being tough in war, is to threaten outright war crimes, and it's a little bit bizarre. Meanwhile, at the same time, We have totally unrelated to anything, and I just don't know why people are talking about it exactly, except that it's weird, but apparently it's a topic of discussion. Lindsey Graham was at Disney World, which ordinarily by itself I was like, yeah, like, you know, I mean, he didn't win a national championship or anything, but I mean, people are entitled to go to Disney World. And I guess they were making a big deal out of it because it says here in the headline, Lindsey Graham explains why he was spotted at Disney World during the shutdown. And here we're only talking about the shutdown of part, I guess of the Department of Homeland Security, and even there, only part of it. And we can't tell which part is really shut down and what part isn't. But it just seemed kind of odd. And I guess you could say, well, if the TSA agents that screened you on your way to Florida so that you could go to Disney World are not getting paid, but allegedly they are. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is procedural. We could get to that later on. But basically, shouldn't you be back in Washington working? And the answer kind of is, yeah, well, nobody is in Washington working at the moment. So I could go back there instead of being here at Disney World, yes. But then we'd be sitting around doing nothing because it would be just Lindsey Graham sitting here and everybody else is at Disney World. But then it sort of developed into, also, why are you at Disney World? Like, you don't have any kids or grandkids. And there were no, it could be nieces and nephews maybe, but none of them were spotted with you. He's just sort of alone wandering around Disney World, which, there's adult Disney fans, and that's a little odd to say the least, but I don't know. I mean, it's not like I don't know. We keep throwing out Disney World as being like sort of all American in some way or another. Why wouldn't he be there? I don't know. I found that very odd. And I find it odd that there's a USA Today article about it. But Julia Gomez, she may have thought it was odd that she was assigned to do this story. So we'll take a look at this, though. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said he made a brief stop at Walt Disney World after meetings in Florida, responding after photos of the Republican senator at the Orlando theme park circulated widely during the partial government shutdown. And I guess that's supposed to make people sad. The images published by TMZ. If you're wondering, like, what serious news outlet spent their time on this, the answer is TMZ. And sometimes they do a tremendous service in trolling their weird corner of the world. But here it is. So he's there on Sunday, and it prompted criticism as thousands of federal workers, including TSA officers, went more than a month without full pay during a shutdown. But, of course, now the news is that they are allegedly being paid. So why is this an issue? Graham has said that he already returned home at this point and has noted that he voted multiple times to reopen the government. I was invited to a meeting in South Florida on Friday with Trump official Steve Witkoff, who should be working elsewhere, I think, and others to talk about the possibility of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. He should be working on the war first. But anyway, I went to Orlando to meet friends after I'm already back in South Carolina. I guess maybe the more odd part of it all was that apparently he was walking around with a bubble wand of some kind, like some toy that, is available for purchase in Disney World. And presumably they almost 100% of them are purchased, in fact, by adults, but usually for children. And maybe he just likes bubbles. I don't really know what's going on. So anyway, now this is interesting. The article goes on to say Graham's visit to Disney World occurred while the Department of Homeland Security remained shut down and TSA agents had not received full paychecks for weeks. But then it says TSA employees began getting paid again on Monday, March 30th, after working without pay for about 44 days following the partial shutdown that began on February 13th. According to USA Today's previous reporting, although the date that's usually given for that is the 14th, but I suppose in the transition from the 13th to the 14th is when the paychecks stopped. Not discussed here is whether or not the president actually has the authority to release these funds to pay these TSA agents. But the odd thing, as we mentioned the other day, is, well, nobody wants a world in which the TSA agents aren't getting paid. So there may not be anybody making objections, although someone will make a procedural objection and sue. probably not an elected official. Elected officials aren't going to want to be on the record saying, no, keep not paying TSA agents. Maybe some Republicans in the House, where they're really weird about this, might be willing to say that. But generally speaking, most elected officials are not going to sign on to that. But it's actually important that it be worked out and litigated, even though it may mean, like, yeah, they come to the conclusion that it was all illegal, and then what? You ask the TSA agents to pay the Treasury back? I don't know. That's also going to be very unpopular, and why elected officials are not going to want to be on board on that. And even outside groups that are interested in, we should be enforcing these rules, are not going to want to come out looking like they're the ones trying to pick TSA pockets. But it is important, and it's important for a number of reasons. I mean, I think you can all kind of in the abstract understand, right? I'm sure everybody can understand, but I think you might agree that it's important to say, well, now, if there's no legal authority to withdraw these funds from the Treasury and pay them to TSA agents, then you shouldn't be doing it. And it's problematic that the Secretary of the Treasury, rather than saying, I'm sorry, as much as I love you, Mr. President, Scott Bessent in this case, right? I cannot release funds from this bank account with which I am entrusted on behalf of the American taxpayers. I can't pay this money out unless Congress has said this is okay and this is where it's going and these are the purposes for it. And then everybody does all the right paperwork. I can't just say, I don't know, people say they want money and Trump says he wants them to have money, so I'll just start sending them money. That's not the way it's supposed to go, right? Right? Exactly. It's not how it works, but we're doing it. And everybody's just sort of reporting, I don't know, Trump says he did it. Some people say he can't do it. I talked to some TSA agents, and allegedly some reporters are saying there are TSA agents who are saying, yeah, there's now money in my account where there was none before. Though there's a little bit, apparently they missed part of the third pay period for the year. As a federal employee, I think you get paid monthly actually, or is it? I can't remember from a million years ago but I think so. I think you get your monthly paychecks, and so I guess pay period 3 was partially paid out and then partially not, because halfway through February. I don't know why that's pay period 3, but whatever. I guess if you get paid first in January, even though it's for your December work, maybe that's why you were on number 1. But anyway, pay periods 4 and 5 were paid to people, but apparently they're still waiting on the partial payment for pay period 3. I don't know why. Exactly why that's the case. And not everybody, though, says that they have gotten the money. So it's very unclear, and certainly unclear what statutory authority there may be. And I guess but the federal employees unions say that they've heard that people are getting their money too, but they're tied up in, well, we're going to fight about what happened to the payments for period 3. They're now ignoring 4 and 5. But for the rest of us, like on principle, if there's no reason for that money to have been released at all, it should be worrisome that the president can just strong-arm the Secretary of the Treasury to say, I'm going to disperse federal funds, because what else might he disperse them for? If on the president's say-so you could do that for an allegedly, good reason, why couldn't they, can they not make that work for a bad reason? Even if they say it's good and the rest of us know it's bad, what good does that do us? And should that panic you? What do the economists have to say about that? What do the financial people have to say about the fact that now the president can just order disbursements for the Treasury with no statutory authority whatsoever? And if he can do that, it's a guy like Donald Trump. Where do we think the money might go now that he realizes that he can do this and get the Secretary of the Treasury to fall in line? It's not to say that he'll fall in line on everything, maybe only on things that seem to be politically popular, like paying TSA agents. But I've not known these guys to be particularly fair about or empathetic, as Brian Beutler pointed out, about where the money goes, especially if it all ends up in their pockets at the end. And I guess now it should worry you when I say the economists and the financial people. One of the reasons that government securities are considered more or less risk-free is, one, fiat currency. That helps a lot too. But on top of that, this sort of strict adherence to there needs to be a legal underpinning for every dollar that's released from the Treasury. And if we just throw that out and it doesn't need to be pinned to anything in particular and the president can just order it dispersed, then there's no guarantee that there will be money there to pay off when you redeem your government securities, and they're no longer guaranteed 100% safe and profitable. They're just roll the dice like anything else. What if there's no treasury left when you go to cash in your bonds? I don't know. And that's one of the reasons why, as sad as it is that TSA agents aren't getting paid, maybe it's not smart in the long run, elected officials, to simply say, what are we going to do? Protest? Well, you might have to. But I think, on the other hand, Trump probably knows that and knows, people around Trump know that and know very well that they would love for Democrats on principle to stand up for protecting the Treasury, but have it be portrayed as they're mean and Grinches and they don't want to pay the TSA agents. I don't know. Just something to think about and keep in mind. And if you're an economist, don't tell anybody because it's going to cause a panic. But it does say, it just jumps straight to it. Again, we're still in the Lindsey Graham article here, just to see if there's any. I would like to know if USA Today can get around to articulating an answer to why it's of interest that Lindsey Graham was at Disney World and that everybody's talking about it. I'm confused by the interest in the news, but they just assert flatly that TSA employees have been getting paid again. Not why, or not questioning, are you sure? Like, I spoke to a TSA agent and he said, yeah. I'm sure you could get it, but I'd like to see it. But here, I guess, is the explanation of who's interested in members of Congress being in Disney World, and maybe a little bit about why. It's TMZ, as we said. TMZ calls for photos of members of Congress. And they've published the images after urging the public to submit photos of members of Congress vacationing while TSA officers worked without pay during the shutdown. But it's a little late because they now allegedly are getting paid. As TSA officers are selling their blood to keep a roof over their heads, members of Congress are packing their bags for a 2-week vacation, and we want the pics. TMZ wrote in an article published on Thursday, March 26th. Days later, the outlet posted photos of Graham visiting Walt Disney World, including one showing the senator holding a bubble wand at Magic Kingdom. I mean, it's a little weird, but there it is. There's the picture. He also looks a little lost, which I think might be, of more concern. Graham faces backlash, it says here. Some criticized him for visiting the park during the shutdown. U.S. citizens are really suffering, and Graham is living it up at Disney. One person commented on TMZ's Instagram posts. California Governor Gavin Newsom's press office also weighed in, responding to the photos in a post on Twitter. Divas still need vacation. Okay. That's it. So, no real explanation as to why I'm actually supposed to be concerned about this, but there it is. And I don't know whether there's been any other pictures, or maybe they just thought it was funny to see him with a bubble wand, and that would be it. Or maybe, I guess that's supposed to intimate something else on top of it all. And that must, I guess that's what's really at the heart of it, which makes it that much more distasteful of a story. Let me go back to another story I think we made mention of. Did we read the full article or just mention the fact that the new one of the new top FEMA officials in the Trump administration is a believer in teleportation, or at least the fact in his mind that he believes he teleported mysteriously at least once, landing at a Waffle House for some strange reason, and everybody's got ideas about why that might have happened in his own mind. But I believe we made mention of it, and I don't think we necessarily read through the article because we were like, what are you going to say? The guy thinks he's able to teleport. That's insane. It's very frightening that people in this administration have power who are this weird and crazy. But apparently he's pushing back. I don't know whether he's going to do a tour pushing back on it and whether he's going to teleport between the sites of the tour. That would be the most effective way of proving your point. But apparently he's talking to CNN and pushing back. So let's see what we got here. I think I don't know whether he chose who he was going to talk to or whether he was just putting out a general statement and CNN decided to pick it up. But when they decided to pick it up, they decided to assign it to or allow Andrew Kaczynski to cover the story, which pretty much guarantees that you're not really... If you thought you were going to get a fair shake on your teleportation story, I don't know. You're really kidding yourself. But I guess once you find out Andrew Kaczynski is going to cover it, yeah, you're probably not going to look good. Oh, and speaking of which, that's been a story too. Caroline Leavitt apparently spent the day in the news crying about not looking good in a photo and then forcing one or another of the press agencies or press outlets to remove the photo from their website because she thought it was unflattering to her, which opens up a whole other can of worms. But perhaps we can decide. We'll give that one a few days to bubble through and see whether it turns out to be important or not. We probably should have done the same thing with the Lindsey Graham story, honestly, but it was an excuse to get around to reminding everybody that maybe it's not such a great idea to just pay TSA agents based on nothing. Anyway, over on CNN, haters gonna hate. That's a quote, I guess, from the FEMA wackadoodle. What's his name? Are you serious? I have to. I can't figure out CNN and its new system of subscriptions, which I was never a thing before. But anyway, haters gonna hate. This from Greg Phillips. He's the top FEMA official who, according to the headline here, defends his claim that he was teleported. This ought to be an interesting defense. Office of Response and Recovery Director Greg Phillips is pictured here with a big beard. And remember, can't be in the Army with a big beard anymore because Hegseth said no more beardos. Anyway, here he is looking solemn but off into the middle distance, so maybe also crazy. Listening as then Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she's gone now, speaks. She too, a big story yesterday. Maybe we'll get around to that. She's speaking during a press conference at the National Response Coordination Center at the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters in Washington, D.C. on January 24th. So it's been a while. We don't know. His beard may be bigger than that now, or it may be gone. But the real story is the top official in charge of the federal government's disaster response has taken to social media to double down on his claim that he has experienced teleportation, an experience he insists was real and connected to his religious beliefs. So, Waffle Houseian. While also saying that his remarks have been taken out of context. I see. Haters gonna hate. Greg Phillips, a senior official at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, wrote in one comment defending himself earlier this month. What's the defense? I know what I've experienced, he wrote in another post, in what appeared to be a poem. I remember that now. Why a poem? Where he refers to people ridiculing what they don't understand and to Jesus Christ rising from the dead, which, people could also fairly be skeptical of, I suppose. But just because people might be skeptical of a resurrection story doesn't mean, and one that a lot of people believe in nonetheless, right, doesn't mean that all of those people also have to believe your teleportation story. There's really no similarity between the two. Anyway, CNN previously reported that Phillips, who serves as Associate Administrator for the Office of Response and Recovery at FEMA, described in a podcast last year multiple episodes in which he says he was suddenly teleported miles away, including once to a Waffle House roughly 50 miles from where he had been. I'm curious about where else he teleports to. Are they other well-known brands, retail areas? I think he did say something about a ditch out. Maybe this explains it. I thought I heard him say something about a ditch outside of a church, and I was like, was the Waffle House next to the church? Did you climb out of the ditch and say, I'm hungry? Or was it a separate incident? Apparently a separate incident. Okay. CNN also reported Phillips has a history of violent rhetoric toward public officials. He said in his podcast last year he'd like to punch who? That bitch in the mouth. Who are we talking about? It's, in fact, former President Joe Biden, who had just left office, before adding, he deserves to die. In another podcast, Phillips said that migrants were coming to kill Americans while warning people to be armed. Now, ordinarily, like if you say in a podcast or anywhere else, I think I'd like to punch the former president and he deserves to die, right? Like, I'm not saying that, by the way. YouTube should not flag this show by saying I said that. I'm saying he said that. And then you should be investigated, or at least not appointed to high government office. The appointment of Phillips had previously drawn skepticism for some career FEMA officials over his lack of experience. That's a bad idea, right? And past comments spreading election fraud conspiracy theories, although several told CNN earlier this year that his work during major storms had tempered some of those concerns. So maybe he actually did some good work in that respect. All right. I'm more interested, though, is like what kind of defense is there of the teleportation idea? Let's see. On Truth Social, Phillips described the teleportation incidents as tied to a spiritual journey. That's in quotes. During a period, he said he was undergoing cancer treatments and pointed to biblical examples of supernatural events. Some things allegedly happened in the Bible, so why can't I have transported to Waffle House? I guess is the basis of the argument. I have no regrets for my words, nor my faith in my Savior, Jesus Christ, Phillips wrote. I don't mean to yada yada his faith in his Savior, but we have heard it before. The Bible has many examples of the power of God. None of them involve Waffle House, but now I guess they do. All right. I have a feeling that, we're being baited here. There's not going to be anything. And even honest to God, what could he possibly say? I was curious whether he would say anything that would make me say, yeah, all right. I don't really believe it, but I see what he's saying, defending himself. But I guess not. He says there's lots of miracles. A lot of them are even in the Bible. And my teleportation to a Waffle House is also obviously a miracle. And that's all there is to it. So good. Let's stop, because it's dumb to continue, quite honestly. Here's something perhaps of more concern. In addition to the difficulty that paying TSA agents with no legal authority poses, in addition to the recent $1.2 million settlement between the federal government, DOJ, and Mike Flynn, and the signal that Trump and Trump World have figured out that if they sue the federal government, they can name their own price, and Trump will have the government direct the government to settle, and there will be a payday. Trump, of course, already knew this. What's amazing is that he allowed somebody else to, A, horn in on the action, and B, get paid before I guess he hasn't been paid, but there's been a judgment or a settlement entered in Flynn's favor. I don't know whether he's been paid. I don't know whether TSA agents have been paid. Nobody knows anything about what's going on in the Treasury anymore. But Trump obviously was the first one to try to dip into these funds, and he's going big. No $1.2 million settlements for him. The New York Times reporting under the headline, Justice Department struggles to respond to Trump's suit against the IRS. This is, I think, where he went first, saying that he was going to sue the IRS over the improper release of some of his tax return information. And, of course, he's looking for $10 billion in payment from the IRS because they angered and embarrassed him. And there's no doubt about the stupidity of the issue and the stupidity of the lawsuit. The only question is, what do you do if you work for the Department of Justice and you're assigned to this case? ordinarily, and even in this case. The assignment is the federal government is being sued, and you are to defend the federal government from this suit. So they're approaching it, the New York Times is, from the very interesting angle of what do you do if you work for the DOJ and therefore, yada, yada, unitary executive, you work for Donald Trump, even though, decades, even centuries of, 1 century anyway, of legal separation, of arm's length at least between the presidency and the Department of Justice is what has lent its legitimacy to the Department of Justice. That all is out the window now. Now you are considered to be working for Donald Trump. How do you work both sides of the same lawsuit? Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, $1 crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's get started on this article about how the Justice Department is going to have to deal with this. They are, as it says here in the headline, struggling to respond to Trump's lawsuit against the IRS. The subheader here reads, officials of the department and the White House are in the middle of a messy and complicated debate over how to respond to President Trump's lawsuit demanding $10 billion from the IRS. Andrew Duran and Alan Feuer are the article's authors here. The Justice Department is struggling to decide how to respond to Trump's lawsuit demanding at least $10 billion from the IRS, as the department's lawyers try to resolve by a mid-April deadline. I guess that's... by the way, thanks for throwing the deadline to the IRS into mid-April, because that's not at all busy. They had plenty of time on their hands. There was nothing going on at the IRS in the middle of April. Sure, fantastic. I wonder where that came from. But they try to resolve this by mid-April. And resolve what? The profound ethical questions that the case raises. Yeah, there are many, according to 2 people familiar with the dynamic, and also everybody else who's familiar with how this crazy thing came to pass. In late January, Mr. Trump took, gotta love the New York Times framing of everything, took the extraordinary step of suing a federal agency that he oversees, accusing the IRS of not doing enough to prevent the leak of his tax returns to the New York Times in 2020. Not suing the New York Times for publishing it. He's suing the IRS for not doing enough to prevent the leak. Now, I think you may recall, well, I don't know whether they'll describe the whole situation in here or not, or just focus on the ethical dilemmas involved in trying to settle it. But, there was statutory authority for getting his returns in Congress. And what Congress did with them, I don't know. But I suppose if they leaked at some point when they were in the possession of Congress and they were published in the New York Times, he's not suing Congress. And he's not suing individual members of Congress who may have had custody of or control over these things. He's suing the IRS for complying with the law under which they were required to provide those returns. I don't know. That doesn't make much sense. But again, it doesn't really matter. A normal person suing the IRS for this would find out very quickly, and the DOJ would tell them and argue in court, and the court would agree with them. No, you can't. You have no basis for suing them, even if they weren't immune from the suit for some strange reason. But here, because it's the president, and anybody at the DOJ who says, no, that can't be done, gets fired, and he keeps firing people until the case is assigned to someone who says, yes, you can. There are people who basically can see the writing on the wall and say, well, suppose we just continue as if you really could do this. How else might we be able to get out of this thing before landing on the inevitable conclusion of, well, I guess we're just going to send the president $10 billion from the Treasury and, I don't know, make do as best we can thereafter? Probably cut someone's health care or Social Security to pay for it? All right. Well, sure. That's what they're working on. So the suit, again, filed back in late January, immediately elicited questions about whether and how Trump administration officials would defend against a lawsuit filed by the head of the executive branch. The government has not yet responded to the case, but I guess they have only a couple of days left. Inside the Department of Justice and the White House, senior officials are in the middle of a messy and complicated debate over their next steps, according to people familiar with the deliberations, who, of course, spoke on condition of anonymity, and you know why. While former Justice Department officials see clear flaws in the president's case, yes, some Trump administration officials worry that assigning a lawyer to contest it would pose an unworkable conflict, given that such a person ultimately works for the president, according to these two people. Defending the case could also contradict the White House executive order that binds all government lawyers to the president's interpretation of the law. I don't know about the legality or reasonability of that executive order, but I get the idea. And at a minimum, this White House is operating under the understanding that anyone who works for the DOJ has to adopt the president's interpretation of the law and defend it. And if you don't, then I don't know whether the executive order outlines any particular punishments, but certainly he feels like he can dismiss you if you won't. And that ordinarily, again, that's not so far off the mark by itself for standard practice. The only thing is that the presidents prior to Trump have always said, well, my interpretation of the law might, have to guide the way the unitary executive, to include the Department of Justice, although, again, previous administration said, well, there's a unitary executive and there's unitary executive. The DOJ has got to have some independence from and distance from the White House, and, we can hide behind that usually, even though you can also manipulate it behind the scenes, and certainly previous administrations have done that. Oh, yeah, they're independent, but, wink, wink. This was the accusation everybody made about Bill Clinton meeting with the Attorney General on the tarmac of the airport. Well, he might be exerting undue influence. Whereas here, but doing it covertly or away from the public eye, whereas in the Trump administration, they just issued an executive order saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have those meetings all the time, and you should expect it, and it's totally legal, and that's the way we're going to proceed. And everybody has basically said, well, it was always a norm that we used to have that distance, but not a law. So he's not doing anything illegal by saying he's going to do things totally different from everybody. He's just rejecting best practices for reasons of his own, though there's nothing specific you can charge him with for doing so. And instead, we now have this idea where the president can say, sure, under normal circumstances, there would be a flaw in this case. But remember that the law, as I interpret it, is that is not a mistake, and that everything that has come before was pre-wrong, and you just didn't know it yet. The new interpretation of the law is, I can have this money. Oh, and importantly, if you're worried about this becoming a precedent for other people to help bankrupt the Treasury, my interpretation of the law is, I can do it, but nobody else can. That doesn't make any sense, but that's my interpretation of the law. And if you don't like that, you're fired from the Department of Justice, and then your opinion doesn't matter anymore. That's the basic problem of all of this. So, yes, defending the case could also contradict the White House executive order that binds all government lawyers to the president's interpretation of the law. and you'll be fired if you don't do it. Another option under consideration is to try to delay the case, either by requesting more time to respond, that's a good idea, or by asking the judge to put it all on hold until after Mr. Trump leaves office in 2029. Wink, wink, if that's when it happens. Mr. Trump's lawyers served the government with the suit on February 18th, giving the Justice Department 60 days to respond. So I suppose that's what puts us in the middle of April. They could have served it at a different time, such that the 60-day clock would expire, later when they had more time on their hands. But I have a feeling they may have been strategic about that one. Well, good on them. I mean, except for the fact that it's removing billions of dollars from our treasury. The Justice Department could also ask the judge in the Southern District of Florida, presiding over the case. Oh, it's Kathleen M. Williams, an Obama nominee, by the way. It somehow did not get assigned to Eileen Cannon, and maybe that'll be what they do next, is they say, well, we'll agree to an extension, but only if we can transfer the case, disqualify this judge, and just see if there's anybody else in the Southern District of Florida that we might be able to get on the docket instead. All right, well, anyway, to get assigned to this case. So DOJ could ask the judge to take other action to resolve the conflict of interest faced by the government's attorneys. I wonder what they might mean. The judge could appoint, for instance, an independent counsel to defend the case instead of the Justice Department. Maybe, although certainly Trump has insisted that he's got control over independent counsels as well. Settling the case would involve some of the president's top aides, including some of his own former defense lawyers, approving a potentially gigantic disbursement of taxpayer dollars to Mr. Trump and his family, a possibility that is likely to provoke political blowback. I think they have that right, typically understated for the New York Times. Regardless, Trump administration officials expect that they will ultimately have to consult Mr. Trump himself on how the government should respond to his lawsuit, the People said. After all, the buck stops here. And I mean, in this case, $10 billion will stop here. Mr. Trump has said, I mean, he does realize that this is a problem. So he says this, even though it's a lie, but he thinks this will solve it. Mr. Trump has said that he would donate any winnings from the suit to charity. Anything I win, I'm going to give 100% to charity, he said in February. And I doubt that he's really going to do that or would ever do that, or it wouldn't really matter one way or another. It's still $10 billion hole in the government's pocket. I don't know that it matters that it goes to charity. The White House referred questions to the Justice Department, which did not respond to a request for comment. Mr. Trump's suit against the IRS, which the Justice Department represents in federal court, is not his only attempt to extract legal damages from the government he leads. In private administrative claims, he's also asked for the Justice Department to pay him $230 million as compensation for the federal investigations into him. Mr. Trump's IRS suit seeks an order of magnitude more money than his other claims and will also play out as part of a public lawsuit, creating more complexity for the Justice Department. The president's suit, which he filed alongside two of his sons and his family business, argues that the IRS did not do enough to prevent Charles Littlejohn, a former IRS contractor, from disseminating Mr. Trump's tax returns to the Times. Okay, so this isn't even the ones that were demanded by members of Congress. In 2020, citing Mr. Trump's tax returns, the Times published a series of articles revealing that he had paid little or no income tax for years. In early 2024, Mr. Littlejohn was sentenced to 5 years in prison for disclosing tax information about Mr. Trump and thousands of other wealthy Americans to the Times and ProPublica. So it seems like justice has been done here. But now he wants money and thinks he can get it, and he might even be right. So he's just going to say, oh, I was terribly damaged by this in ways that sending the guy who did it to prison doesn't satisfy. Now, in order to do that, ordinarily he would have to show, well, why $10 billion? Where did that figure come from? What damage did you actually suffer and document that adds up to that? And well, that's only of interest if we're going to adjudicate this case. I'm going to direct the other side in this case to settle with me, so evidence isn't actually an issue. Oh, well, that is convenient. Anyway, in addition to imposing criminal penalties, federal law also allows people to sue the IRS over the unauthorized disclosure of their tax information. So there you go. Those suits are supposed to be brought within 2 years of a taxpayer learning about the disclosure of their tax information. In his suit, though, Mr. Trump said that he didn't learn that his tax information had come from the IRS until January 29th, 2024, exactly 2 years before he filed his suit, when he received a formal notice from the IRS about the disclosure. So it's interesting that he, waited the full 2 years after finding out to file his $10 billion lawsuit, which, most people wouldn't wait if they thought they'd been damaged to the tune of $10 billion. But some former IRS and Justice Department officials in a friend of the court brief filed in Mr. Trump's suit said that Mr. Trump must have known about Mr. Littlejohn's responsibility for the leak earlier. The brief notes that Alina Habba, identifying herself at the time as a lawyer for Mr. Trump, attended Mr. Littlejohn's guilty plea in October of 2023. So that's when you would find out about it. In a normal proceeding, the Justice Department would likely start by trying to throw out the case because it came too late, former department attorneys said. In other cases stemming from the leaks, government lawyers have also said the IRS could not be blamed for Mr. Littlejohn's actions since he was a contractor for Booz Allen Hamilton and not an IRS employee. That's an interesting twist, too. Mr. Trump's demand for at least $10 billion in damages for the leak struck several former tax lawyers at the Justice Department as outlandish. True. They were struck that way. It's outrageous that the head of the executive would shake down an agency like this, said Charles Duffy, who once worked in the tax division of the department. Okay, that's kind of a weak ending to the whole thing, but the meat of the story is up top. How do you deal with representing both the IRS and Trump in all of this? If your job is on the line, if you don't simply surrender and notch a big loss for the DOJ and IRS, then Trump will fire you. But if you don't lose the case on behalf of the IRS and the DOJ, then Trump will fire you for costing him $10 billion. So I don't know. There's no way out of that one. So sure, it's worth keeping an eye on. And again, under whatever the methodology is, both this and the TSA agents getting paid and any number of other things, including the construction on the ballroom apparently being halted by a federal judge in the last day or so as well. But just Trump just sitting there saying it doesn't matter what the law or legislation or constitution or a federal judge, any branch, any people, any document says about my ability to order the Treasury to disperse funds. Scott Bessent is under my thumb. I'm going to order money to be paid, and I'm going to take that money. And I might use it myself. I might give it to TSA agents. It doesn't matter. But I have the right as president to just unilaterally direct money to be dispersed. And it's as plain as day in the Constitution that is what? It's not how it works.
That is not how this works!
That's right. And I guess that brings us back around to, the Constitution very plainly says that people born in this country, under whatever circumstances, are citizens by birth. But we're just going to have a case and argue, that's very uncomfortable for me, and I wish that wasn't the case. All right. It's not the first time the 14th Amendment has been ignored, and it's black and white plain text, so we'll do even more. Why not? All right. Well, let's see. I didn't put aside the ballroom story by itself, but maybe we can go and grab that, and I think it should be relatively easy to find. But a federal judge put a hold on things here. Shall we jump out of the New York Times coverage and into something else? Well, who else is covering this thing that would be worth reading about? Well, maybe they keep giving me the New York Times because, well, of course they're one of the top, national outlets, obviously, but I guess I click on their things so often that maybe the AI algorithm says, oh, he wants to read the New York Times. I'd like to differentiate it a little bit, but anyway, I'll just grab the headline because it, verifies the point. Zach Montag has written this for the Times. Judge orders construction stopped on Trump's White House ballroom. A federal judge required the president to seek lawmakers' input and pursue traditional approvals before proceeding with the $400 million replacement for the East Wing. Even that gives him unduly favorable coverage of what this whole thing is supposed to be about. Oh, it's a replacement for the East Wing. You mean the one he tore down? Yeah. That's the one. We didn't need replacing it, but there you go. Anyway, what I thought was interesting from out of all of this, and I don't know whether this article will cover it or not, but apparently Trump's response to this is, it's a very clear ruling. You really have to stop and pause, and there's several steps you need to be able to take and show that you've taken before you proceed at all. And Trump, being asked about it, said, actually, if you read it very closely, it says I can keep building. So just add that to the list. 14th Amendment doesn't say what it says, either about insurrectionists or about birthright citizenship. The whole power of the purse thing, and that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but by direction of an act of Congress. Screw that. To hell with that. I can sue the federal government for billions at a time and just shovel it into my own pockets. And if they say I have to stop building, that actually means no, I don't. A federal judge ordered on Tuesday that construction be halted on the proposed White House ballroom to be built in place of the demolished East Wing, saying work must come to a stop until the project receives a go-ahead from Congress. But, of course, he's just one federal trial judge, so we're several appeals away from finding out what Trump will be ignoring in the end. Will it be just a district court judge or the Supreme Court as well? The decision delivered the first meaningful setback to the president's increasingly audacious efforts to redesign the White House and Washington. It came after months of litigation in front of Judge Richard J. Leon, an appointee of President George W. Bush, who had previously declined to step in, but now I guess finds himself compelled to do so. In a 35-page opinion, Judge Leon wrote that Mr. Trump likely did not have the authority to act without consulting Congress to replace entire sections of the White House, changes that could endure for generations. In an opinion punctuated by 19 exclamation points, Judge Leon, not all at once though, also reiterated concerns he had raised for months in court that from the start, the administration has provided shifting and questionable accounts of who was in charge of the project and under what authority private donations could be accepted to fund it. P.S. Same story for Dodgy, who's in charge, and whether or not, I don't know whether any private donations were being given to Dodgy, certainly, but what authority do they actually have? What authority did they have over things that weren't even governmental organizations to begin with, like the Institute of Peace, et cetera, and then faking who was in charge for long enough to see what they could get away with while they tried to settle the question. Same thing in terms of shifting and questionable accounts of what's the objective in the war with Iran. We really just have no idea at all what actual policy is. And by the way, so for all the pundits out there saying, what's the policy goal of your no kings thing? I don't know. What's the policy goal of, let's say, the actual administration in charge of the federal government of the United States of America? Nobody knows that with any more clarity than we do about what no kings protesters are thinking. But apparently not an avenue of inquiry for you. Unless and until Congress blesses this project through statutory authorization, construction has to stop, ! He wrote. But here's the good news. It's not too late for Congress to authorize the continued construction of the ballroom project. I don't think that's really actually good news, but okay. Maybe that's supposed to be good news for the sign I'm yelling at with all the exclamation points. You can still make this work. I don't want them to, but you can. Judge Leon wrote that if the White House sought congressional approval, the legislature would retain its authority over the nation's property and its oversight over the government's spending. Spending, that's right. The National Trust's interests in a constitutional and lawful process will be vindicated, he added, and the American people will benefit from the branches of government exercising their constitutionally prescribed roles. Not a bad outcome, that! ! He concluded. The decision is technically temporary. Oh no. A preliminary injunction barring further construction while the litigation continues. And Judge Leon paused his own ruling for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Oh no. To allow the government to appeal. Of course. The Trump administration filed that appeal on Tuesday within hours of the ruling. And maybe that's all that Trump is pointing to. It says, actually, if you read it, it says I can keep building. For 2 weeks, he's right. I guess it does say that. Everyone else was ignoring the fact that he could put it on hold for 2 weeks to appeal because they figure normally appeals like this don't go anywhere. But since he can fire anybody who gets in his way, I suppose his appeals do go somewhere. During a public event at the White House shortly after, Mr. Trump delivered a lengthy defense of the project, insisting that it was no different than previous renovation projects at the campus that were completed without consulting lawmakers, whether they were or not. I don't know. Sometimes he just makes that up. They didn't ask for permission to build this, that, or the other thing. Yes, they did. Oh, well, to hell with all of that. I don't care. All right. He insisted that it was no different from previous renovation projects, and it was necessary to make national security improvements, of course. Congressional approval is not necessary to put up a ballroom, Mr. Trump said, which, again, is just the opposite of what the judge says. Judge Leon's ruling suggested he was satisfied that the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a nonprofit chartered by Congress to guard America's historic buildings, which is sued over the project, had put together a workable challenge following several misfires. In December, and again in February, he declined to step in and deferred to the Trump administration, which has argued that an order halting the project would leave an open construction site next to the president's residence, impairing the ability to do basic work at the White House and even jeopardizing national security. I mean, I guess that's an argument, except, why is the hole there? You put it there. And, I mean, what's the difference between our having a hole there now and our having a hole there later? But it'll still be there. I know. It's there now, though. And are you okay? I don't notice that you're trying to live somewhere else because you're worried about your security. Lawyers representing the government have also asserted the project falls within the president's personal authority to modernize or improve White House grounds. Mr. Trump began construction of the project shortly after demolishing the East Wing in October, arguing that a ballroom was needed to host larger events indoors without spilling onto the South Lawn. But at every turn, Judge Leon had disagreed with Mr. Trump's position. At several hearings, he implored Yakov Roth, a senior Justice Department lawyer, to be serious and back off claims that the project was comparable to minor renovations of presidents past, including the addition of a swimming pool or a tennis pavilion. He repeatedly referred to the project's planning and execution as a Rube Goldberg machine. By March, Judge Leon appeared to have lost patience with what he described as shifting positions by the government, particularly surrounding the role of the National Park Service and the role they've played in approving the project and acting as financial conduit for private donations supporting it. President Trump has forged ahead with design work as the litigation stalled, working with an architect and periodically showing off renderings of the project. On Sunday, the president flashed the most recent revisions to reporters on Air Force One after a review by the New York Times highlighted elements that architectural experts said appeared careless and betrayed how little the project had been scrutinized. In a winding post on social media reacting to the ruling, Mr. Trump lobbed criticisms at the National Trust, which is also involved in a lawsuit over the president's attempt to seize control of the John F. Kennedy Center of the Performing Arts. National Trust for the Historic Preservation sues me for a ballroom that is under budget, ahead of schedule, being built at no cost to the taxpayer. Will be the finest building of its kind anywhere in the world, he wrote. The National Trust has argued that the project was rushed through with no warning or input from Congress. It also contended the way that Mr. Trump proposed to pay for it was legally problematic. The president, he says he has raised more than $350 million from personal backers and around 24 tech, cryptocurrency, and defense corporations to fund the building of the structure without government support. A report in November by the group Public Citizen found that 2/3 of the publicly identified corporate donors had received government contracts collectively valued at about $275 billion. Judge Leon told lawyers repeatedly that he believed the issues would ultimately be settled by the Supreme Court. Well, certainly Trump will just continue appealing to them until he gets the answer that he wants. He waved away one issue raised by Mr. Roth at a hearing last year with the prediction, you'll get your chance at the court of review, he said, and so they likely will. So, all right, there you have it. He's sure he can continue to build, that no taxpayer money would be used in any of this except if he decides to steal it from the Treasury and use it. I don't know how they think they're building a military complex underneath this ballroom and not using taxpayer money for it. It may be that the $400 million that he uses to build the ballroom proper is raised from outside, but what goes underneath it? Oh, I don't care. Who cares? I don't differentiate. It goes under the ballroom and something national security, so you can't be told about it. And do I have statutory authority? No. What I have is Scott Bessent in my pocket, and he'll release the $100 billion I want. Oh, okay. Well, that ought to settle everything. No, it settles nothing and leaves us in remarkably bad shape. Tomorrow we can return. Of course, Greg comes back with, I forgot to play the go away and come back tomorrow thing, which is that's probably what he's holding on for at the end. But having been off the air on Tuesday, I was disoriented. All right, we got plenty to cover for the rest of the week. Who knows whether we'll get to all of it. And speaking of architectural renderings that don't mean anything, perhaps you saw Trump unveiling, as the Daily Beast puts it, the crass horror of his book-free presidential library. Have you seen the video? We can share it with you.
From netrootsradio.com.
You'll be horrified, no doubt.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Anyway, we got Justice Putnam coming up next with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, where he will be covering that Trump is in a full-blown panic as his war in Iran continues to escalate despite his attempt to leave and falsely pretend the war has already been won. We'll be checking in with the Forest Service and what they're up to. I don't know. It's a mystery to me, but I'm out of time to explain it to you. That's why he comes next.